What we like to really talk about in the field is this trauma-informed care, that we look at everything through the lens of people's response to trauma and how we can be more sensitive and empathic to the situations and things that they've dealt with in their life, and moving things from what's wrong with people to what's strong about people. What have they been through and how have they survived that? What can we tap into that helps people be resilient? Because the truth is, and Bob, I don't know about you, but if I spent a week, 2 weeks on the street, I don't know if I could do it. I see the things that my clients go through, and I'm so impressed that they can continue to wake up every day and try.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Zack Coil. Zack is with The People Concern, which is a nonprofit that helps to alleviate homelessness. We'll be talking to Zack here in a second. First, I'd like to invite you to visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. Over there, you can listen to episodes, see photos of my guests, read synopses, a little bio on myself. There's a donate button if you'd like to support the show. That will also give you access to some extra content. There's also a YouTube channel, The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman, and you can listen to the episodes there, and the Exploding Human Facebook page. As I said, my guest today is Zack Coil. Zack has been a social worker for some time, and he works now with The People Concern for, I think he said, 11 years. And what they do is a variety of things to alleviate homelessness, from raising money to outreach programs to getting help for people, not only for housing, but for mental health and other issues such as alcohol and drug addiction. Lots of components to this big problem, which we all know about is going on in the United States. Here in Los Angeles, it is estimated that there are about 70,000 people who are homeless. So it is a huge problem, and Zack is part of the solution. I hope you enjoy the episode. Zack has a lot to say, and I learned quite a bit from him about the situation that is going on. Here we go. This is Zack Coil. Good morning, Zack. It's good to see you, man.
Hi, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good. It's an interesting thing. I haven't done any podcasts yet on homelessness, residentially challenged. I don't know what the proper term is. We don't want to offend anybody. We just want to help people. Isn't that what we want to do?
That's right, Bob. I guess, old timers like us, although, you're, youth challenged in reference to most, but
thank you.
People of our age may be used to things like saying homeless people or homelessness, but the more in vogue and sensitive term that people are using these days is people experiencing homelessness, which is quite a mouthful. But I think the idea is to say that it's the movement of people first language. So people experiencing homelessness, not just homeless people. Like it's not a permanent state of being, and it's not the only thing they are. You can be an artist experiencing homelessness.
Yes. And it's that it can happen to anyone. That's what I think. I mean, under the right set of circumstances, anyone can be without a place to live. And a lot of people have experienced it. And I've known many people who have had that challenge. And your nonprofit, is that what we call it?
Yeah, I work at The People Concern, which is based here in Los Angeles. We formerly were called OPCC, which is Ocean Park Community Center, and then a downtown organization called LAMP, which stood for Los Angeles Men's Project. And these are older terms that kind of came from a different era. These two organizations merged and created a bigger organization called the People Concern. So we're one of the largest social service providers in Los Angeles County, primarily very heavily involved in homeless services, housing, interim housing, lots of different contracts with city, government, different Department of Mental Health, Department of Health Services, these different organizations. So we're a nonprofit.
So the money that you get to be a nonprofit, because nonprofits need plenty of money to survive. We all know that. Where does that money come from, primarily and secondarily, and how does that function financially? I'm just curious to get that out there so people can see what the bottom line is and how things work.
So a lot of our money comes from different county and city revenues. So people in Los Angeles will remember Measure H, which was something that we voted in a couple of years back to fund homeless services, which is a 1/4 cent sales tax on every dollar spent goes towards homeless services. So, Bob, when you have your $4 almond milk macchiato, half calf with a twist of lime, 1 penny of that goes towards homeless services. And that funds a lot of outreach work. It funds a lot of supportive housing work. But we also have contracts that go back prior to that. The city of Santa Monica funds some of our work. We get money from the county Department of Health Services, Department of Mental Health for very specific work that we do. And then through Department of Mental Health, we bill Medicaid or Medi-Cal for mental health services. We also get a lot of support from donors and foundations. So it's a public-private mix.
Well, that's a great way to do it, I guess.
Yeah.
To get it from everywhere. Now, when you say outreach,
yes.
What is that? Does that mean you've got people walking out into the community looking for people in situations where they're living in the streets, and you're trying to bring them in?
Yeah, you don't have to look very far, Bob.
No, just take a walk is really all you have to do. Is take a walk.
Yeah, you could hop on a bike and you'd be even more effective. So one of the big things about homeless services had been for many years, a drop-in center, a place that's, the idea of soup kitchens, shelters, places where people could come seeking services. We're more the last time there was a homeless count in LA County, there was over 70,000 people on the streets, many of whom are not dropping in and accessing services or choosing to show up and try to get a shelter bed. So in order to address this really, really extreme need, we think it's more effective to get people out into where people are. So the whole concept would be to meet people where they're at. Our outreach teams often are multidisciplinary. So we'll have people with mental health background, either masters in social work, marriage and family therapy, professional counselors, different kinds of masters in counseling, substance abuse clinicians and counselors, people with lived experience, lots of people that were formerly homeless or formerly using drugs and alcohol and have reformed, that can connect with people on the streets, understand what their experience is like. Then we have general case managers. We also partner a lot of times with health providers. So we do a lot of partnership with Venice Family Clinic, bring medical services, as well as sometimes trying to get higher end mental health services like psychiatry out into the field. So basically we try to create a clinic without walls, So one of the things I say about our client population is, when you think about that book, what is it? Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. I kind of try to look at like what skills are lacking. And a lot of it are these basic skills, such as waiting in line, taking your turn, sharing with others. So those are skills you need to say, go and get an appointment for therapy, or get an appointment to see a psychiatrist, or take care of a medical problem, get in line for housing, you have to wait in line. You have to go and interact with people. A lot of our clients are really struggle with some of these basic skills that most of us take for granted. And so we try to go to people and bring whatever service they might need directly to them.
I always wonder about the mental health aspect of people who are on the streets. I mean, I know some of it's pure mental health. Some of it's a combination of mental health issues because of drugs and alcohol. Some is just drugs and alcohol. And some of it's just really unfortunate circumstances that have happened to people by job loss or a divorce or abusive situations. I mean, it's so all encompassing. It seems very daunting to be able to help anyone.
You're definitely right. And I appreciate that you're kind of recognizing a lot of people think it's everybody on the streets is mentally ill. Everybody on the streets is on drugs or drinking. And, there are, large percentages, but serious mental illness, which, somebody who has a diagnosis of schizophrenia and they end up on the streets is a small percentage. These are the people that stand out to most of us, right? But I would say that no matter what, there are people who end up on the streets because of circumstances, loss of job, something happened in their family and they didn't have something to fall back on. But spending one night on the streets, not everybody, but I would say you spend a couple nights on the streets, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, you're going to have a mental health situation, no matter what. So whether it got you there or not, by the time you're there, you're dealing with the trauma and the insecurity and the lack of safety of living on the streets and kind of trying to figure out what to do from day to day to day. So you're in more survival mode. A lot of people on the streets are in kind of this fight or flight trauma response just by the mere fact that they have to be out there and be on alert. It really activates that like lizard brain, right? Where you're trying to make sure you're safe every moment. So the mental health stuff, I think, is, and what we like to really talk about in the field is this trauma-informed care, that we look at everything through the lens of people's response to trauma and how we can be more sensitive and empathic to the situations and things that they've dealt with in their life, and moving things from what's wrong with people to what's strong about people. What have they been through and how have they survived that? What can we tap into that helps people be resilient? Because the truth is, and Bob, I don't know about you, but if I spent a week, 2 weeks on the street, I don't know if I could do it. I see the things that my clients go through, and I'm so impressed that they can continue to wake up every day and try.
It would change you very quickly. I think it would, or it would change us very, very quickly. I would imagine within a week you'd have a whole different perspective on the world, not in a good way. I would imagine you'd be suspicious, frightened, being looked at as somebody who doesn't have it together, or even this idea that, well, if there wasn't it, you wouldn't be homeless unless you were lazy or stupid or had, a drug addict or whatever it is. And there's a lot of judgment that's ongoing day after day after day, not to mention the struggle to get food. I always think about it at night. What if you got to go to the bathroom? Just that simple thing. I mean, I get up. If I have to go to the bathroom, I walk down to the bathroom, down a couple of steps away from the bedroom, and I go to the bathroom.
A couple times a night, I imagine, at your age.
Oh, it was 50 or 60 at this point. I might as well just take a pillow in there. So
just roll over and pee in a bucket.
Oh, you got a thing with age, huh? Do we have a people concerned for older folks, for the aged?
I just like to give you a hard time, Bob.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I feel that every day above ground is a victory, and at 67, I'm doing really well. So, how old are you, young fella?
Oh boy, all right, 44. And
you're a kid.
I know, but I started having some of these things like, my hip hurts and this and that, and a couple times a night I have to get up too already, Bob. I don't know. It's happening at a young age. Maybe I'm projecting a lot.
Well, the first time you get injured in your sleep, you know that that you're on your way out. You go to bed and you're like, I feel pretty good. I'm going to go to sleep. And then you get up in the morning, you go, my shoulder's killing me. What happened?
I wake up in the middle of the night with those calf cramps sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the worst.
Yeah. And people say, oh, just get up and stand on it. I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
Just shake it out. It'll go away. I'm like, who can get up when your leg's not working? If there is, give me a situation, give me a miracle. Let me hear something great. Give me a story. You don't have to, obviously you don't give me any names. Tell me one of those stories that's going to be uplifting to the listeners to know that you guys are really, helping someone. And it doesn't have to be, I went from living in my car to I own a mansion on the beach. Not that, but somebody who was just really almost, you think this person cannot even be helped, and now they're functioning at a high level.
So there's somebody I know from Guatemala, but he did have a green card at one point, and he fell on hard times, untreated mental illness, and he was on Skid Row for many, many years. And he was an entrepreneur on Skid Row. He had one of these sidewalk bodega situations where he had cigarettes and drinks and things, and he sold, the part of the black market that kept people going down there. He had employees. I mean, he was a real hustler down there. And then he got really tired of that Skid Row lifestyle, and he came out to Santa Monica and started sleeping in the cemetery a lot. What's it called? Woodlawn? Yeah. The cemetery.
Yeah. I know where that is. Mm-hmm.
He would sleep with the ghosts, and he would sleep out in Palisades Park. And he spent many years kind of just, drifting around in Santa Monica. And then he, one morning, I think he told me that I think it was like a little bit drizzly, like one of those kind of wetter Los Angeles mornings.
Yeah, June gloom.
Yeah. And somebody came and asked him if he wanted to maybe come and get some food at OPCC, which is my organization. And he came in, he started engaging in services a little bit. And he did all the things he was supposed to do, and he went into interim housing. This guy is there's a Garifuna. Have you ever heard of Garifuna?
No, I have not.
In Honduras and Guatemala, it was kind of escaped slaves mixed with the indigenous population. So the escaped slaves from the Caribbean nations would mix with the indigenous population, and they had this kind of special, it's, I guess if you think of what is it, the Seminoles or these different kinds of mixed nation, and they exist along the coast. So he's a traditional, they have their own language that's a mixture of like African dialects, indigenous dialects, and Spanish. And so he, when he went into interim housing, he's rediscovered his native drum passion. He's a drummer, and he started doing his drumming in interim housing, and then he would do drum circles with other clients. He started helping out with we have a canine connection, which helps pets, homeless pets, and he does some events with them. And he eventually was able to work towards getting his own apartment. And he got his own apartment, and he continued to come in and volunteer and work with the residents at the shelter that he used to be at. And he could do anything. He could cook. When the cook quit, he became the cook. When they got a new cook, he showed the new cook how to do things. And he was volunteering his time. And we were eventually able to help him to, become, employed here in different ways. And now he helps out on my outreach teams. He goes out and he's our number one person for things like taking people to the DMV. He can sit with anybody. He can talk to anybody. He's just such a special guy. And, he and I sometimes go, my kids every year for their school classes, their grades, they always, we've helped them put together hygiene kits to give to my clients. And I'll often bring this gentleman with me. And my kids know him and they just light up when they see him. They're so excited. And he's just like really one of these people that, they don't make people like this. They don't, you don't know anyone as good as this person is. Right. And he was somebody that you could have easily given up on in the world. And that he could have just given up on everything too. And he did for a long time, but he started to believe in himself and he started to reconnect to like that part of himself that was healthy and whole. And then the thing, all he loves giving back. He loves giving back. And he's such a good person to have around. He looks out for the other staff. He's like the person I have train my new staff. Like, this guy's going to take you around town and teach you what it's like to live on the streets and what to watch out for. Because he's you don't survive years and years on the streets by being a fool. So he's, I often see him out. Everybody will be talking to people and he'll stand back and just kind of be scoping the scene. Whenever we're out together, I walk over to him and he's, always keep an eye on that. Do you see that? Did you catch this guy has, a little knife in his pocket? I'm like, oh, well, I didn't see that. He sees everything. And he's such a special guy. This is not what everybody always sees, the big stories are like the soloist, right? Like this, rags to riches and everything is hunky dory. That's not what it looks like.
I would think that would be a very rare kind of a situation.
When it does, we hold on to it like for dear life, Yeah.
How was his mental health issues dealt with?
He seeks treatment. And, he has for years. He's really, really good about that. There are times when he asks, he calls me up and he says, I can't come in this week. I got to take care of myself. And
is he on medications too? Yeah. So that really is an important piece of it. It seems to me because there's probably talk therapy, but there's also medications, and that combination of things plus feeling good about yourself, having a purpose. You mix those three together and you can have almost anyone have a good life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the medication thing is an interesting piece. Our position as we do harm reduction, housing first work, which what that means is we're not going to put preconditions on the work that we do with you. So we're not going to say, and I went to social work school, and in social work school, they would say, this is a classic thing. If somebody shows up intoxicated for your session, what should you do? And the answer is end the session, right? And you can't do that with people experiencing homelessness. You have to be able, you could, but you'd run out of clients pretty quickly. And so our position is that we're going to keep trying to the best of our ability to work with people no matter what, whether they're sober, whether they take their medication. We're going to keep ourselves safe because you can't help anybody if you're not safe.
Yeah.
But we keep going back and we keep trying and we keep attempting to assist people. So one of the big things about people with serious mental illness, one of the major symptoms is that you don't realize you have mental illness, right? And it seems almost characteristic, the idea of getting treatment and help for anybody, if it's drugs and alcohol, mental illness, there's an unwillingness and a lack of acceptance of what's going on and that things could or should be different. And there's a defiance to what they're being told. And so it's really important that we build trusting, supportive relationships with people. Sometimes people, I would love to see a psychiatrist and get on medication. I just can't wait in line all day at a county building to make that happen. I can't wait for an appointment where I tell them my whole story. Then they give me an appointment 4 weeks later to finally sit down with somebody. I just can't do that. And they'll do something right away. But a lot of people who are, I would guess the people that come to mind as homeless people on the streets that you're really like concerned and nervous about, that general kind of person screaming at the air is not just waiting for somebody for me to come up, hey, you want some medication? Right? So it's about building that lasting relationship, trying to help provide some stability, something that that feels safe and nurturing, even if it's food, water, clean clothes, just saying hi. You were talking, Bob, about that experience of people on the streets of, I had a client talk to me about this once, where just because I'm sleeping next to a trash can doesn't mean I belong in the trash can. Just because I'm lying on the ground doesn't mean I'm litter. And I think that is oftentimes how people feel when they're passed on the sidewalk, right? And looked at and like, why are you acting that way? I think that there's a strong sense of shame and stigma and judgment. And so we try to just lend just a sense of common humanity to people. And then you see what happens. And sometimes people go into interim housing or they work on something with you and they'll build trust and they might try some medication. For things like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, it's really, really a game changer.
Sure. I mean, those are major disorders that have to be treated that way, it seems. Otherwise, You're not going to have any success.
Yeah. But the kind of depression, anxiety, lack of feeling good about yourself that someone might feel, it's not going to be the first thing that you're going to want to, if I said, we need to address your mental health before we work on your housing, I'm kind of depressed and anxious. I'm not so sure about myself. And, luckily they didn't make me resolve that before I got an apartment, but I sure would feel a lot worse about myself and have a lot more problems if I was on the street. So housing first is let's get you into a safer environment and then try to address the things that are going on around you, whether it's mental health, substance abuse, physical health. A lot of times can't get your physical health taken care of because of your, day-to-day living struggles. We had someone recently who has, this terrible distended hernia, just really, really uncomfortable. And we took them in for, we did all the steps, regular doctor saw, put in the referral, make the appointment, get to the appointment. And the doctor said, you have to lose 50 pounds before you can have this operated on. I mean, okay, maybe there's a good reason, but that's the type of thing that's just never going to happen.
Yeah.
If you're losing 50 pounds, geez, I can't even lose
that
10
could take
pounds.
that could take 6 months to a year if the person was diligent.
We had somebody who was told they needed to quit smoking in order to get some sort of medical procedure done. It's can you see how hard it was for us to get this person even to this appointment, So I'm kind of rambling all over, but I think that the idea of, if we could just get them all on medications, it certainly helps. And, but there's a lot of stuff that is, other than these, serious mental health conditions that are much more situational, that people's circumstances can help. Of course, getting into housing and getting stable, sometimes the chaos slows down, right? And then suddenly you're left with yourself. So I've seen people really struggle with adapting because it's, keeping your life in chaos and your life being so loud and having people around sometimes keeps you from thinking about all the awful things that have happened. And
I had an interesting experience. I was doing some volunteer work at through Step Up on Second, which I'm sure you're aware of.
Mhm.
And their whole thing is housing first, which is what you're talking about. And they partnered with the VA in West Los Angeles, and they have housing there for veterans that didn't have housing. And the woman that was in charge there was telling me there was a couple of guys there that periodically would just walk out of the room and go sleep in the woods on the property, because they knew that, and it made them feel like connected. I mean, they did both. And then there was a guy who was working there. He said when he first got his first apartment that he slept on the floor. He didn't understand or relate to having a bed. It took him a couple of months, whether it was, I don't deserve it, or I don't know what this is, or this feels strange. He said it was a really odd kind of a thing. Like, here I am, I got this housing, and now I don't even know what to do with it. So that was a real eye opener for me, because I didn't really, you'd think, I would think, oh, great, a bed, and he didn't even want to sleep on it. And then I asked another guy there, I said, what do you attribute you feeling pretty good these days, now that you're in this place and you have housing and all that? He said, this is the first place I've ever been where people actually talk to me. He goes, and that I'm allowed to say whatever I want and that I can talk. I'd say he was about, 65. He'd been on the streets for 25 years, since Vietnam, even, actually. And sweetest guy, I just was, I don't know his full set of problems, but he was he just loved it. He loved to be able to be heard.
Yeah. So
what you were saying about that is creating a safe environment for somebody to be who they are in that moment is from what I gathered being around these guys was essential.
I've been doing this now for 11 years and the situation has, there was a period of time when it felt, I would say, hey, I work in homelessness, I work with homeless services, and people, oh, wow, that's so interesting. And it was just kind of like, wow, what an interesting job you have. And now I go, I work in homeless services. And people, oh, well, what are we going to do about this? And, everybody has a very strong response, which of course they do. There's 70,000, probably more, 70,000 of our fellow LA County residents sleeping on the streets. When you drive down the street, I have young kids, and their experience of the world is that this is something that can happen to people. This is a thing that happens to human beings in our society. I think that's just traumatizing and awful.
One of the wealthiest places in the world, and how is this happening that all these people are falling through the cracks and not able to survive in a place to live?
And people try to make sense of that. And, I have to say this, Bob, I'm consistently I become hopeful, and then I become consistently despondent about people's capacity to disregard the struggles of others. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic feeling like, maybe this will really bring everybody together. I remember walking down the street and feeling like we're all going to get through this, and this is going to bond us. And I just become so incredibly demoralized by that not being the case. And everyone just resorting to, me first stuff. But I think what happens, and this is my opinion, is that people look at that, and people have their kids in their cars asking them questions, and people look down the street and see people sleeping on, in encampments, and it scares them. And there's an option of, that's a human being just like me having an awful experience in life, or that's something else, and somebody made bad choices and is doing things wrong. And it's not going to happen to me because I do things right and I make good choices. And so it's this dehumanization of the people living on the street who are suffering so greatly. And I don't defend the behavior, because I it's awful. Some of the stuff I see out there, some of the ways that, they treat each other sometimes, the homeless on homeless, the things that happen out there are not defensible. But the fact that this happens in our world is outrageous. And if I offer up that this is a connected human to me, I have to invite into my thinking and into my heart that this could happen to me or anyone I love. And that's so terrifying, right? I mean, I have little kids. I know you have kids. Like, can you imagine if that happened to you or someone you love? I mean, it's heartbreaking. And so to help people build back a life, they need a community that cares. And so my outreach team, the work that we do at the People Concern, I think is, I don't know that we're going to solve homelessness just by wanting to. But I do know that you could build a bunch of housing, have all the resources available. But if people don't have trusting connections, they're not gonna succeed, right? And I can put people in an apartment and they're not going to succeed unless there's somebody who's looking out to make sure they're doing okay. And so, a lot of the job that we're doing that some people think is creating homelessness, the fact that there's homeless services is creating homelessness, apparently. Some people's mind.
Oh, that's some logic. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're replacing what society should be doing for itself, caring for each other, looking out for each other, helping each other. We're like what a surrogate family, a surrogate community. And, it's really, really troubling to me when I hear, the internet is probably one of the worst places ever created, and I should never hang out there. But there's some really, really just awful things that people say about fellow human beings. And I have friends who say this stuff too, and it's just disappointing.
It seems like it's a lack of understanding, a lack of compassion, and a total fear. If I allow this to exist, other than these are bad people to be gotten rid of, then I could catch it and it could happen to me. So we have to, there's a fear there that's just so deep. I would imagine that it turns into hatred, really, is what it turns into. Yeah. If you're that way, it's because you did something wrong and you're bad. It's like, well, that's not, it's amazing. Like, have you ever had a situation where you judged people and then it happened to you and you went, oh, was I wrong about that? It's like that happened to me or my family, and I judged these other people as being bad at what they do or incompetent or, horrible parents, or, you get that a lot. You know who the most judgmental people are? Young parents, parents of young children.
Are you talking about me, Bob?
Yes,
yeah,
I am.
See? Yeah, see, this is where the turns.
Not you. But you're in that world, so you must see it. Yeah.
And I've I was at these toddler birthday parties. I'm sure you remember.
I do.
These people that were there talking about, how they were on Nextdoor and reading about all these things that have been happening. And they went to the park with their kid and, saw this thing, and they just weren't feeling safe in the neighborhood anymore. And I just, this is West Los Angeles. It's a major, major urban city.
Let's build up the fear.
Yeah. And these places, it's like there's stuff that's happening that people catch wind of, and I don't know. Well, now we're talking about the internet, but so I think, one of the things that is most rewarding about this job, while it's amazing to see people succeed, I think for me and for many of the people I work with, it's great. We love to see people get housed and do well. But I think the best thing is when you get that feeling you just talked about, Bob, with the guy who said he felt heard for the first time. And, when my staff come back and I see it start to click, they're training and they're doing this, and you have to know so much to help people here, just about resources. But when you hear about a interaction that somebody had with someone who's in such terrible despair, in such an awful situation, and your heart touches their heart, and your soul touches their soul, and that thing happens, that is like, the basis of the human experience, right? And I think that this issue of homelessness becomes so technologized, or it just becomes so much about the mechanisms and the housing and this, and it's like, to me, the bottom line is that our man helping his fellow man, or woman, or they them, whatever, people helping people, and recognizing our common bond, and that my salvation lies with your salvation, right? And there's so much disconnect in our society. I think there's just so much of it. This rise in homelessness is clearly, we could look at the economics of it, and affordable housing, and the way that the education system, the criminal justice system, the mental health system, like all this stuff fails us. But that's because we fail each other, and we fail to love each other, as equals.
That really is what it comes down to, isn't it? It's love. That's really the way to solve every problem. Obviously there's practical issues to deal with, but underneath it is what you're talking about, is if we can understand that we're all the same, we come from the same place, we're all the same. And if we can love each other, then we can be open to knowing that there's a way to help somebody else underneath all of it, whether it's, a house or food or what, I guess it really comes down to, if you're going to be selfish, if human beings are going to be super selfish, then we're going to have actually more problems, even though you think I'm taking care of myself. Are you really? Because if that's what you're doing and this other thing's being created, is that really a solution? And I'm talking, a little spirituality here, but can that message grow and be a part of our lives? I don't know. I think there's always going to be people that fight it, and other people that promote it, like yourself. Little compliment.
Well, it's really easy. Thank you, Bob. You too.
Thank you. I was fishing.
Wow.
Not really.
Yeah. I don't know. It's I think it's really easy in this work to get really lost in the data points, the numbers, the bureaucracy, the irritation, and particularly at the level I'm at, where it's not very often that I actually get off. I'm a desk jockey now, right? That's what you do when you're super successful in any field. You sit at a
isn't that amazing? The thing that gets you started, that you're really passionate about, you get really good at it, and they promote you, and then you don't get to do it.
And then you get to learn how to balance budgets and do HR tasks. But it's something that I think I lose track of all the time, is like, why do I do this? What's the point? And there's that wounded healer thing. I think that really resonates for me. The people that come to this work are often, here because we understand, we have empathy and a feeling for, what people are going through. We can't ignore it. I've been interviewing a lot of people recently, and people who are switching professions, and they say, I look around when I'm on my way to my other job, and I just want to help. I want to do something about this, and I can teach people about mental health conditions and what drugs do what to you, and where to get a medical appointment, how to get housing. But the most important thing that we can do, that I can do with my staff, I think, is to help them connect to the part of them that cares and not lose it, because it's really easy. It's really easy to do this and care and, have your heart just ripped out and stomped on.
I mean, that's always the hard part, when it's just not going the way you had really hoped. And sometimes good enough is as good as it gets, no matter what you do. And that's a tough one. One.
Yeah. This work is particularly tragic because the average life expectancy of somebody who's experienced chronic homelessness, which is a year or more on the streets, or I think up to a year, over 4 years or something, with breaks in between chronic homelessness, the average life expectancy is 25 years less than that. I mean,
that does not surprise me.
But that's crazy.
It's
right.
Well, it's unacceptable.
It's better to have things like diabetes and emphysema than to have be homeless, right? I'm just saying, I don't know. I'm not an epidemiologist or whatever that actually knows that that's true, but there's probably some medical conditions that you stand a better chance of living a long, happy life with than just something that is man-made and solvable by man. Right.
That guy I was telling you about that I was talking to that said he was hurt. He was telling me he was crossing the street. I don't know what street it was, like a fairly busy street. And he was an older guy with a scruffy beard and, not great clothes or anything. And he fell. He had something going on with his leg and he fell. And he goes, and people just walked by him. Cars were honking and people were walking by him. They were scared. I said, he was really upset when he was telling me. I go, they were probably scared. Maybe they thought you were drunk. He goes, yeah, I can see that. He goes, I wasn't. Finally, these two young guys came and picked me up and took me to the curb and got me some help. He goes, but it was so painful and humiliating to just be laying in the street and have people walk by me or just, be inconvenienced. It was just a hard story to hear. I was so happy to see a guy like this with a place to live.
I think we have a world that kind of reinforces honking your horn and driving by.
Get out of the street.
Exactly. I mean, I can't tell you, we go out and do outreach, in a town like Santa Monica that, for all intents and purposes, probably imagines itself a progressive and liberal place, but we have people come up to us and yell at us for what we do,
because they don't want to see it in their beautiful community that they paid a lot of money for a house, and you're encouraging it by, helping these people. And it's like, that's what they're thinking. It's like, I don't want to see this. I don't want it here.
That's what they say. That's what they say. I have staff come back almost daily with stories of community members telling them, that they're doing the wrong thing.
Right. It's like people that say, I wouldn't be wealthy if I didn't deserve it. Did you think maybe you were lucky? Maybe you were lucky by birth, or you were fortunate and maybe you did work hard, but it's not because you deserve it. It's because that's what happened.
Yep.
Wow. So let me ask you this: let's just talk about housing for a second, since that seems to be the beginning of changing people. There's temporary housing, like shelters.
Yeah.
And then you would go to maybe Section 8 housing. Would that be the next step? That seems like hard to get, right? Isn't that a long waiting list? And then what's the other sort of supportive housing? Tell me what the LA structure is that you guys use. I'm interested in that.
Sure. So we have what's called interim housing, which most people would think of as a shelter, which is, a shared congregate space, sometimes bunks, but more kind of like cubicles, separated cubicles, with food offering and stuff like that. There's a thing called shared housing, which is, I guess, the closest you could imagine is like a frat house or a sorority house, like a large living environment with multiple roommates that you would, rent space in and share duties. And so that lowers the rent, right? So, but it's still fairly costly for a place like Los Angeles to make that work. There's the sober living kind of world that's similar to that. And so when you talk about subsidized housing, there's a couple different resources. So Section 8 is federal housing subsidies through HUD, Housing and Urban Development. So there's a wait list for standard Section 8 for families or people trying to get out. That's very, very long. There's programs specifically for people experiencing homelessness that are that you can qualify for based on your experience on the street. So that's what we use. Sometimes that is what's called scattered site, which means here's a voucher, you go look for an apartment, pays up to a certain amount, you pay 30% of your income and try to find a unit somewhere. Then there's project-based, which is something like what you described, step-up runs, where it's a building run by an organization that all the people in it are there on subsidized terms. So that's federal. We also have countywide, our Department of Health Services has diverted some money. I mean, I just described this, that we know that chronic homelessness is a chronic health condition. We know that it reduces your quality of life, your life expectancy, and it leads to worse health outcomes. So the Department of Health Services in LA County uses money to house people because it is probably a better, more cost-effective way than trying to provide somebody on the street medical care all the time. Mm-hmm. Getting them housed means that they'll probably be more likely to take care of their health issues. So there's some county funds that go towards that as well. Well, let me see. There's other things that we'll do and we do offer this. I should mention that we also try to reconnect people with friends and family. Sometimes on the streets here, you will find people who do have somebody who's looking for them or willing to take them in or they'll go back to. And so we will help people connect to family members that say that they will take them in and house them. We don't just ship people back to Ohio or Connecticut or something. We have to get, a conversation with somebody who says, yes, I'll take them. And we buy them a ticket and help them get there. And then we check in on them every couple months until, we're satisfied that they've stayed. So these are kind of the basic ways that people can get off the streets. All of it takes work and connection and time. There's very little thing that can happen like, let's get you into a shelter tonight. Very hard to do.
It seems very case by case too. Each person has their own set of issues that has to be dealt with. So there's case workers that people get assigned to, or the other way around. It's almost a little bit of detective work. It sounds like too.
I say that it's part I actually, at the point when I look at resumes, if somebody has had heavy customer service work, especially a type of place that they got treated poorly, kitchens, serving, working in like large retail stores, baristas, these people make great homeless outreach workers because they deal with everything, right? They deal with people's bad attitudes. Sales, it's basically part sales, customer service. And then, what you were saying, what were you saying?
That it was detective work.
Detective work. Yeah, there's like all this stuff. But I always say that, like, especially as an outreach worker, you're basically like the 2021 version of the traveling encyclopedia salesman.
Yeah, right? It's cold calling.
Yeah, knocking on doors. Hey, can I interest you in this? And then homeless people don't have doors to slam in your face, but they have behavior they can use to get you to leave them alone. So you're basically like a canvasser for Greenpeace, right?
I have to say, I once sent some money to Greenpeace, and by the end of the hounding of phone calls and people, I was getting phone calls like twice a week for more money, and I finally had to get mad. I'm like, I gave you money, leave me alone now. Now I don't like you. This was a long time ago. I don't know if they still operate this way, but I was so annoyed by it. Was like no good deed went unpunished there. I was like, geez, man, I know where you are. I found you once.
Yeah.
You don't have to remind me. I got it.
It seems like they use your entire donation to send you letters for the rest of your life.
Well, they probably did blast through it. Yeah. They took all the money and they came back at me for more. And, I want to save whales as much as anybody, but come on.
What about the humans? The whales will be fine. Save the humans.
Yeah. I don't think they do, like, don't they do? They were more environmental and animals and stuff, but humans, yes. I think we'll put them first these days. Now, people can volunteer at the People Concerned.
Yes.
How do they do that?
We have an email address, volunteer@thepeopleconcern. We also have a donation email address, donation@thepeopleconcern.org. I encourage people, if they are interested, if they want to know more, if they want to help out, to check out our website, thepeopleconcern.org.
Very good. And I hope some of my listeners will take you up on that wonderful offer to help all the good folks at the People Concerned and the people that they help. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And good luck,
fun, Bob.
You guys. And I hope you keep up the good work, which I know you will.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you for having me.
Much appreciation for you folks listening in to The Exploding Human. Check out the website, which is theexplodinghuman.com. The YouTube channel, The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman, and The Exploding Human Facebook page. All places you can listen to the show. And again, huge thanks to Zack Coil. Enjoyed talking to him. Great guy. Please volunteer, donate, whatever you can do in your community. And in Los Angeles, check out doing that through the People Concerned. Have a blessed day. Thank you.